We begin this morning with President Biden's visit to the UK and the start of a big week in Europe that'll see the president also travel to Lithuania for that key NATO summit.
The president is due to arrive in Windsor this morning for his first meeting with King Charles since the monarch was crowned. The president missed the coronation back in May, but was there for the Queen's funeral last year. Earlier this morning, the president met with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in London to discuss the war in Ukraine. The talks came just days after the U.S. controversially agreed to send cluster bombs to Kyiv. See, more than 100 countries, including the UK, have signed on to a convention that bans the weapons from being used. Speaking to CNN, the president defended his decision to supply those bombs.
It's not an easy decision, and it's not. We're not signatories to that agreement, but it took me a while to be convinced to do it. But the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop the Russians now keep them from stopping the Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't, and I think they needed them.
In just a few moments, we're going to hear from NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. But first, let's get to NBC News foreign correspondent Meagan Fitzgerald, who joins us from Windsor. Meagan, good morning. So we know the president's set to arrive at Windsor Castle shortly to meet with King Charles. What can we expect from that meeting?
Yeah, guys, good morning. Good to be with you. You're absolutely right. We are expecting the president to arrive here at Windsor Castle within the next 30 minutes or so. When he arrives, we know that he's going to be received by the king in the quadrangle of the castle, which is just behind me here. There will be the honor guard who will give the royal salute, and they'll play the U.S. national anthem. Then we suspect that the two will go inside the castle. They'll have tea. They're likely to discuss climate change. Now, of course, this is an issue that is near and dear to the king's heart, something he has been advocating for more than 5 decades now. We know the president has commended him on his efforts over the years. And the two will meet for the first time since Charles has been king. As you remember, President Biden did not attend the coronation in May, something that we don't typically see of United States presidents. Instead, President Biden sent his wife, Jill Biden. Guys.
So, Meagan, as we mentioned, the president already met with Britain's prime minister earlier this morning. They, of course, talked about the Ukraine war ahead of this week's NATO summit. What was this meeting like for the president after that controversial decision to send those cluster bombs, something that Sunak says he discourages?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're talking about a fundamental difference here. Now, we know the United Kingdom is one of more than 100 nations that have signed that convention banning the use of cluster munitions. Now, the United States is not signed on to that convention, though the majority of its European allies are. So it's a difference here. But we have heard from the president on CNN talking about how it was a difficult decision for him to come to that conclusion, to send these cluster munitions, which have the ability to kill civilians, which is part of what makes it controversial. But nevertheless, we know that the two discussed Ukraine, their fierce support in helping Ukraine be victorious in this war.
And Meagan, we know Ukraine's bid to join NATO could be discussed at this NATO summit. I mean, this issue really is somewhat divisive right now, especially between the U.S. and the UK, right?
You're absolutely right. I mean, we have heard from Rishi Sunak's foreign minister who stood in support of Ukraine's mission to become part of NATO. In fact, he said that he wants to see this fast track, similar to what we saw for Finland in joining NATO. But the United States has a different posture there. The president doesn't believe that now is the time for Ukraine to join NATO. But also, we know that President Zelensky was given the invitation to attend the summit tomorrow in Lithuania. Will he be there? We don't yet know. But should he attend, we know that he's going to be going hard after this commitment that NATO has said back in 2008 that one day NATO will receive Kyiv. And so he wants to see some progress on that. But I want to play for you now a little bit of what President Biden said on CNN. Take a listen.
I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO. I think we have to lay out a path, for the rational path, for Ukraine to be able to qualify to get into NATO. And we have, when the very first time I met with Putin 2 years ago in Geneva, and he said, I want commitments on no Ukraine in NATO. I said, we're not going to do that because it's an open door policy.
So, guys, look, all eyes are certainly going to be on this convention as it kicks off, or on this summit, rather, when it kicks off tomorrow in Lithuania.
All right, Meagan, reporting from Windsor, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.